Hey everyone, and welcome to today's Explainer. So today we're diving into something really foundational. We're looking at the actual, literal blueprint for building a life of depth, presence, and genuine meaning. And listen, we're not going to sit here and talk about abstract theories or wishful thinking or, those temporary life hacks that you try for a week and then totally forget about. We are looking at the architecture of a well-lived life. And just like any magnificent building that actually stands the test of time, you can't start by building the roof, right? We have to start at the very bottom. We have to pour a solid, load-bearing foundation that can actually support the weight of everything else we want to build on top of it.
Sleep soundly, eat protein and vegetables, drink water, pick things up from off the ground, put them up overhead, and carry them for time and distance. That's from strength and performance expert Coach Dan John. We spend so much of our time frantically searching for these complex, biohacked secrets to perfectly optimize our mornings. But the actual secret? It's embarrassingly simple. Coach John didn't write this because he ran out of complex, fancy ideas. He wrote it because he stripped away absolutely everything that wasn't essential. These incredibly basic physical actions, they aren't some trivial warm-up for the real work of living. They actually are the load-bearing foundation. All right, so let's move into Section 1, the blueprint, depth over extension. Okay, so with our physical foundation poured, we immediately face what is basically the central wager of our entire existence. It usually boils down to this profound tension. Are we trying to live a remarkably long life or a remarkably meaningful one? There's this devastatingly clean logic in a parable by Anthony DeMello. In it, an angel comes down and offers a master 1,000,000 years of life. And without even hesitating, the master's like, no thanks, I only want 80 years. The master knew that if he lived for 1,000,000 years, people would just become completely obsessed with endlessly extending their lives, rather than, actually cultivating wisdom. That gift of infinite extension would literally swallow depth whole. So the question for us is, are we just filling our days with endless distractions, or are we actually taking the time to cultivate wisdom? This idea of choosing depth naturally brings us to a really common, universal error. The brilliant management thinker Peter Drucker used to warn people about this. He pointed to Mexico's mid-century economy, where they basically spent 50 years building these massive, high protectionist walls just to shield themselves from the outside world. And guess what? It completely backfired. It just created this fragile dependence instead of actual enduring strength. And the crazy part is, we do the exact same thing in our personal lives. We build these defensive walls so we don't have to take creative risks, because we're terrified of being criticized, or we completely wall off our emotions so we never get hurt. It feels like safety in the moment, sure, but it's really just a slow-motion surrender. You simply cannot wall your way to greatness. The classic moralist Aesop honestly wraps up this whole 80-year wager perfectly with this timeless warning. We would often be sorry if our wishes were gratified. Getting everything we think we want, like infinite time on Earth or total walled-off protection from anything that could hurt us, is usually just a curse dressed up as a blessing. Why? Because the limitations, the everyday struggles, the friction, those are actually the very things that give our lives their shape, their purpose, and their meaning. A solid blueprint absolutely requires limits. Let's keep building. Section 2, the scaffolding, the values we transmit. As we start putting up the scaffolding of our lives, we have to take a really close look at how we interact with the people around us. The author Ryan Holiday has this incredible insight into just how revealing our questions are, especially the ones we ask our kids. On a normal day, a parent might ask, hey, how was school? Or what grade did you get on that test? Now, there's nothing inherently wrong with those questions, but think about it. They transmit a very specific message. They say, we are tracking compliance and results. But what if we flip the script? Inspired by the Stoic philosopher Seneca, what if instead we asked, who did you help today? Or what good turn did you do? When you do that, you aren't just making polite small talk. You are quite literally installing a framework of empathy. It's wild how just a simple shift in questioning can build such profound character. Leo Tolstoy once observed that an unwise man makes requirements for others, but a wise man sets requirements for himself. I mean, think about it. Making endless demands of the world usually just leads to bitter frustration, right? Because newsflash, we cannot control the world. But setting rigorous, tough requirements for ourselves, that gives us our agency back. By simply asking, who did you help? We transition ourselves and the people we love away from constantly seeking external approval and towards building a really sturdy internal standard of character. So how do we reinforce the scaffolding day in and day out? Well, we go right back to the body. John F. Kennedy famously said that mental and physical vigor go hand in hand. But movement expert Erwan Lacour pushes this concept even further. He says the body and mind aren't just running on parallel tracks, they are the exact same track. Movement is literally a form of thinking. Think about your own workouts or any time you really exert yourself physically. You aren't just in there building muscle, you are actively practicing presence and earning self-knowledge in real time. The philosopher Arthur Schopenhauer made this brilliant argument that only the truth you earn through your own effort actually truly belongs to you. Think about the difference between borrowed knowledge, like, passively scrolling through inspiring quotes on social media, versus earned knowledge. Earned knowledge is the deep, physical resilience you gain from sweating, from failing, and from forcing yourself back up off the mat. The strength and wisdom you earn through that kind of repetition and fatigue isn't just some abstract idea floating around in your head. It becomes a permanent, functioning member of your own body. Now, you're probably wondering, how do we sustain this kind of monumental effort without just completely burning out? Well, chess prodigy and martial artist Josh Waitzkin gives us the perfect antidote to that feeling of grim obligation. He says you have to cultivate a genuine affection for the process of becoming better. And what does that actually look like in real life? It means leaning in and embracing the awkwardness of being a beginner at something. It means actually laughing at yourself when you stumble. When it stops being this bare minimum compliance and transforms into an expansive practice that you genuinely enjoy, that is when you finally stop looking for the nearest exit. Moving right on along to Section 3, Interior Design. Peace is an inside job. Okay, so moving into the emotional interior of our structure, Ralph Waldo Emerson drops this stark, almost uncomfortable warning on us. Absolutely nothing is going to bring you peace except yourself. You simply can't wait around for the perfect circumstances or the right set of achievements to finally feel okay. The peace you're looking for is entirely an inside job. So ask yourself right now, are you just fleeing disease or are you actively cultivating ease? If your goals are built entirely around escape, like just running away from anxiety or pain or the fear of failure, you'll usually find that the exact thing you are fleeing tends to follow you around like a shadow. But if you turn around and focus on the active cultivation of presence, the destination tends to meet you halfway. A really crucial part of this interior design is doing a little demo work, removing those internal walls we've spent years constructing. Miguel Angel Ruiz points out that self-rejection is actually the most deeply personal form of protectionism there is. We are so often our own harshest, most ruthless critics, walling off our past failures and our awkward contradictions just out of sheer shame. Forgiveness is basically the heavy sledgehammer that breaks that specific wall down. It's that profound, incredible relief that washes over you when you finally stop trying to protect yourself from yourself. The best fighter is never angry. Lao Tzu gives us the absolute ultimate image of internal peace here. Think about it. Anger in combat is just desperation. It means something outside of you is dictating and controlling something inside of you. A true master fighter is incredibly, powerfully strong, yet completely, perfectly still. When you stop going to war with your own flaws and finally find that stillness, you become infinitely more capable of handling all the chaos and challenges the outside world throws at you. So, to actually achieve this kind of stillness, the source material suggests implementing what we can call a shadow curriculum, these quiet daily protocols for your attention. First, try to match every single complaint immediately with something you are thankful for, just so difficulty doesn't become the only lens you see the world through. Next, reject minimum wage thinking. In the real world, this literally means wiping down the counter fully and doing the job right, even when you're the only one in the room. Also, trust but verify, and that especially applies to your own assumptions. And finally, be a hero. Stay brave just 5 minutes longer. Because sometimes being a hero doesn't mean doing something flashy. It just means sitting through an uncomfortable silence in a really tough conversation instead of storming out of the room. And finally, Section 4, the reveal, clearing the rubble. Okay, get ready because we've reached a profound shift in perspective that pretty much reframes all the philosophical architecture we've been talking about today. A soul does not learn, it simply remembers what it knew all along. This was passed down from David L. Gaffer through Tolstoy, and it is a massive, radical claim. It essentially means we aren't actually out there gathering all this brand new information to try and build a meaningful life from scratch. The real ultimate takeaway here is that we are not accumulating, we are excavating. All of the heavy lifting, the practicing empathy, the self-forgiveness, it's all just clearing away the accumulated rubble of modern life to uncover a beautiful architecture that was already whole to begin with. So, to bring it all together, the journey of this architecture just flows so naturally. We start by trusting those simple, load-bearing physical basics, sleeping well, eating real food, picking heavy things up. Then we move inward, clearing away all that emotional rubble by forgiving ourselves and tearing down our defensive walls. And all of this intense, foundational, structural work leads us to a beautifully simple, deeply human end goal. As the writer Denise Chavez puts it, the culmination of all this effort is simply to sit down at a big, round table with other human beings, share a meal, and let your head and your heart finally speak with one unified voice. Are you inventing things to do to avoid the important work? Emerson asked that, and it's a gut punch, isn't it? Because it's just so incredibly easy to hide behind shiny new distractions, or endless preparation, or those artificial walls we build. But as we've seen today, the blueprint is delightfully simple, and your foundation is already there waiting for you. So what artificial walls are you going to tear down today? The blueprint is entirely in your hands. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer, and keep building.